review this and then I'll. What's that?
Joseph Korea, who's that?
Joe Correa from Slayer, Patricia. Patricia.
No,
You remember, you'll remember.
No, Brian?
He was on. All right. Good evening. It is 6 p.m. This is the regular business meeting of the Smithfield Township Board of Supervisors. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Members present include myself, Chairman Jacob Pride, Vice Chair Robert Levenheim. Supervisor Barrett was here, but his connection must have been lost, so we'll see if he comes back. Our solicitor Ron, we expect to hear from him on Zoom due to the weather conditions, and potentially the same with our engineer John Tressler. There are no announcements this evening, so our first order of business is the consideration of the minutes of the February 8th, 2023 regular business meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim, I will second. Any questions? Hey, John,
Hello, sorry for being late.
you're okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We do not have any public hearings this evening, and at this point, I will reserve the solicitor's report for later on. Ron indeed attends on Zoom. Then engineer's report, John, we can come back to that. I don't want to put you on the spot unless there's anything.
The only thing I have to report is, I know, Missy was tasked with looking at the draft Act 160. She's almost through with that, and we should be getting you some correspondence on that next week. Just some bullet points that we think you might want to take a look at.
Perfect. Oh, and Ron's here on Zoom. Hey, Ron, how you doing?
I apologize for being a bit late. I tried to get on my iPad and it tells me I need a Zoom update. So I switched over to telephone. It still works.
You missed the Pledge of Allegiance. I know that's your favorite part.
Hold on. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now,
By the way, the part under God was put in only in the 50s. It wasn't there before.
And it was a big Supreme Court case for years.
Yes, it was. All right. Well, the only thing I have to report is that I had received a call, and then it turned into a conference call from an attorney by the name of Thomas Wyatt, who works with an attorney, Sidney Malilo, who are the attorneys for the 42 Smithfield residents that are on the water line with Delaware Water Gap. And they were saying that they've been attempting voluntary cooperation. There are apparently 6 parcels that need to have the water line fixed. And apparently the line, I am told, is in very bad shape and needs to be not only repaired, it has to be replaced. So I was told 2 of the 6 landowners would agree. I was not given any names. However, as an authority, they have the power to condemn if they want to for the water line easement for those other 4 property owners. And if they are unable to secure that voluntary agreement by those other 4 owners, they would want to condemn. And in order to do so, since they're an authority within the township has to give its approval. Doesn't have to condemn, it just has to give its approval And that would normally be by way of a resolution. So I'm not sure if you want me to get back to the powers that be and tell them that we discussed this evening, or just tell them that if they want to condemn, that's fine, we'll do a resolution or something in between.
And so I see no, objection to that path. It sounds like, you've got your feedback on that, and that sounds fair. I mean, we're really just waiting to hear back from other folks at this point, if there's only 2 out of the 6, correct?
2 out of the 6 have agreed, so 4 have not.
Oh, hopefully they can, get to that point, but because I don't want to do anything drastic without at least some sort of communication from them, but I don't know, Robert.
Yes, I agree.
So do you want me to report back in some fashion after tonight's meeting to these attorneys, or do you want me to let it cook for a bit, or something else?
I have no problem with you relaying, that sentiment, and then see if it develops from that point.
Okay. Okay, so then other than that, we have Julia's fine work in combining the ordinances, so I guess they're ready to go to planning. And that's about it on my end at this point.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Okay, so our first order under new business is the consideration of the consent agenda. Similar to last time, there was an oversight that led to 3 items being included instead of the first 2. That said, do I hear a motion to approve items 1 and 2 of the consent agenda?
Making a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim, second by myself. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We will have to reserve the 3rd item for later, as I have to recuse myself, as I did at our last meeting. The second item up is discussion around the River's Edge Bike Park proposal. Who would like to begin with that? Julia, John?
Julia?
Okay. So I sent this out to the board a couple weeks ago. Level has provided us a proposal to do the engineering to create the as-built for River's Edge Bike Park. I hadn't seen any movement on it, and because this is related to our NPDES permit for River's Edge, I wanted to make sure this was moving forward. One of the things that we need to talk about tonight is, do we like this proposal? And I have also not yet sent this to Middle Smithfield Township because the board has not had the opportunity to discuss it yet. So it's up to you how you want to proceed. My recommendation as far as this goes is that we should at least put it under Middle Smithfield Township's nose, get their feedback. Because we do both own the bike park, so we should figure out where to go from there.
Yeah, I see no reason why that would be a problem. I know they've expressed their own interest in, working on this. So if there's going to be some sort of, cost split, I'd love to get their feedback. They actually meet tomorrow, so I doubt that that's going to be soon enough, but perhaps we can let them.
Will do.
That sounds cool to you, Robert?
Yes.
Overall, it's great.
Okay,
Thanks for doing that, John.
sure.
Next is the consideration to send the draft solar and warehouse ordinance to the planning commission for the final review before the proposed adoption date. I would like to thank everyone who's put in so much work into this. I think this is really going to help us combat, the abuses that we've been seeing in some other municipalities. I also want to thank, our friends in Pocono Township for working with us too. John, you essentially pulled double duty on that, so thank you. The only issue that I saw had nothing to do with the solar, but was permitting, no, it was with the solar, sorry. It was permitting large scale solar use in the R2 medium density zone.
Yeah, I had the same question. Well,
That's the only issue I
yeah,
have.
and not R1, but R2, but why R2? What was the logic?
It was something the planning commission had decided because the lots are smaller for R2, it would make it, I guess, slightly more feasible that electricity that was being generated could be nearby. It is a bit of a fallacious argument as I say it, but if the board doesn't want it, we can take
But
it out.
that's not accessory solar, that's just.
Correct. This would be for solar fields.
It just seemed like, why did we not have a not have it in R1, but say it could be possible in R2.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's appropriate to do it like that.
Okay.
And everything else seemed to be fine.
Then if you guys are in agreement, what needs to happen is you need to vote to send it to the Monroe County Planning Commission and the Smithfield Township Planning Commission with that amendment. With the understanding that it will be reviewed and adopted. I did send this out via email, but at the March 27th meeting that you're going to vote for to hold
Correct.
next.
Well, I'll make that amendment, that motion that we send it to the Monroe County Planning Commission and our planning commission too.
And our planning commission with the change.
As written with one amendment, which would disallow solar in R2. So solar, I'm talking about solar fields would not be allowed in R1 or R2.
Okay.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim, I will second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Following that, in order to meet our statutory deadline, we must schedule a special Board of Supervisors meeting for March 27th at 6 p.m. And we would like to advertise doing so. So do I hear a motion to do that?
Motion to approve a special meeting on March 27th, 6 p.m.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim, second by myself. Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'm gonna give Julia 90 seconds. to catch up.
I'm caught up. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, cool. So next is the discussion about the Pocono Mountain Visitors Bureau grant commitment letter. Discussion.
Yes, so last meeting we had talked about submitting.
Excuse
to-
me, Julia.
Ryan, there you are.
Hi, Brian.
Yeah, how you doing, everyone?
Good, how about you?
Good now.
Good. We were wondering, because we had one item that, because I had to recuse myself on the resolution 524, as we did at our last meeting, we're gonna need, your vote for the consideration of that at the end. So I wanted to make sure I let you know that we saved that for you.
Okay, good, thank you.
Not a problem. So
Uh,
Julia just started on the Visitors Bureau grant.
So back to the Visitors Bureau grant, we talked last meeting about going after the Minnesink Park ash tree mitigation for those funds. I wanted to get a second opinion quote estimate on how much it was going to cost the township. So I reached out to Blue Ridge Tree Services as well. I'm still waiting to hear back from them, but the grant is due on March 3rd. That being said, the board did allot $10,000 in the budget for this year for this. So if it's okay with you guys, I'm asking for your permission to sign a match commitment letter up to $10,000 once I hear back from Blue Ridge Tree Service, just so we can go after the maximum amount of funds possible to get this done.
Can I say something?
What?
Lee Bauer cuts firewood, and I talked to him, he'd be willing to go down and do all that for nothing for the firewood.
Does he know how many trees he's
Well,
talking
you
about?
know, Lee, he did it on Bob Shabalsky's property. I mean, he just cuts wood like crazy. The only thing I have to consider is something with insurance, I would assume.
We would have to have somebody that has insurance, so if he does, we can consider that. But if he doesn't have insurance, it would be quite a liability.
I got no problem asking Lee if he's got the insurance, because that's not required necessarily for the grant. We just need a figure, so.
I've cut wood with Lee. He's a good wood cutter.
All right.
So I think we should apply for the grant anyway, but, that's.
Yeah, it's a fail-safe.
He's another vendor he could use.
Okay.
No issues with that.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, Ron, I'm going to turn to you for the consideration of the agreement or discussion, however you want to frame it, with the PMIPA and BCRA agreement related, as it relates to Airstrip Road. I understand we have a document here from Attorney Wolf to consider.
Yes, there are really two documents, but the one that involves the township is the cost reimbursement agreement. Now, I believe through the magic of our township manager, she was able to put this on the agenda. And I believe that I or she or both of us notified Attorney Kanzinger, who is the attorney for the, I believe, owner and or developer, and Attorney Wolf's office, who represents the industrial authority, to participate in this meeting if they wanted to. So if they are on and after I'm done speaking, they can certainly chime in the event I misstated or I did not correctly identify the issue. So as to the cost reimbursement agreement, I have reviewed that. I have reviewed draft number 7. That's how many times it's gone back and forth between the attorneys. And it appears to be in order. That basically will reimburse the township for any costs, reasonable and necessary costs that they incur with respect to the condemnation of the property in question. Now, as an aside, there were some emails that came back and forth that indicate that perhaps that condemnation will not be required, that it could very well be that we could get an agreement from the either the present railroad or the present title holder in interest to get that piece of railroad property, and then both the Slater Company and Black Buffalo will then deed over to the township the part of the easement or roadway that they own. And then at that point, we would be able to finalize that document and or finalize the easement and get that taken care of. If not, we would have to then still proceed with the condemnation. The other agreement is between the industrial authority and again Slater and also Black Buffalo with respect to a utilities agreement. Initially, and again, that's about draft number 4. Initially, it was to be just to put in a water line. Since that time, it's been discussed that perhaps a gas line may also be installed. And to go further, to just be safe and in an abundance of caution, just change the agreement from the water line agreement or the water line and gas agreement to simply a utilities easement agreement to allow that area to be able to take in any utility, water, gas, whatever might be the case. So that's not something that the township really needs to sign or be concerned with, but it was given to the township as a courtesy for me to review, which I've done. And as far as I'm concerned, I believe the cost reimbursement agreement, which again, I have looked at, and there may have to be maybe one additional review or revision by Mr. Wolf's office. As far as I'm concerned, that's ready to be approved by a motion to be signed by the Board of Supervisors.
Anybody have any questions for Ron?
What is the cost reimbursement, Ron?
It is no number. It's simply saying that whatever the township incurs as reasonable and necessary cost, it will be reimbursed. So that would normally involve any administrative time, engineering time, legal time, and of course the fair market value that is going to need to be paid for that particular area if in fact the condemnation has to proceed. So it's an open-ended agreement to repay. There is no limit on it.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. All right. Well, a motion would be in order. Do I hear said motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim, seconded by myself. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, again, I'm not sure if other council are on, if they want to add anything, even though the motion has been approved. But they certainly can if there's something that they believe the board should be aware of, which the board should be aware.
Hearing none, we will proceed to our next item, which is a discussion on the Walter Sandstone contract.
May I
We're going to hold your comments until we, finish the
Well, I think you
introduction.
two are all right, that you're not loose up here, that you're gonna spend $90,000 on some junk.
I'm not loose, but Pam, please hold your comments
Okay.
until afterward. We're going to let the professionals speak about that. I'm going to say for the record that I'm gonna recuse myself from this discussion with an overabundance of caution in accordance to the guidance provided to me by the House Democratic Caucus Chief Counsel, as I discussed at our last meeting. So with that, I'm gonna leave it to my two colleagues and our township manager and
This project has gone in fits and starts, because of, delays on both sides. On our side, John, what is it we had to do for the park, because we're cutting more than an acre or something for the whole. Yeah,
Well, once you disturb collectively more than an acre, you gotta get an NPDES permit.
right,
So
so that held us up. I don't even know if we have it yet, do we?
I don't believe so.
When do we think we'll get it? Do we have any idea?
I wasn't prepared to answer that. I don't know.
Well, that's on our side. On the sculptor's side, he had a extremely bad skateboard accident last year, which held him up a lot. So at this point, we paid him, 50,000, right? I think we paid 50,000 out of a contract of 90,000. And we paid him pretty much on the schedule that he asked us to, 30, 30, and 30, but he wanted an advance on the second payment. Isn't that right?
I'm checking the reimbursement at this time. So when the board agreed and signed the contract,
Right.
that there was an initial deposit of 15,000.
Right,
On March 14th, there was another deposit of
right,
15,000.
that's the first
And
statute.
then on May 31st of 2022, there was $10,000.
So that's 40 is all we paid him?
40, that's
40,
correct.
50 to go. And phase two, which is the second statute, would take us up to 60,000, right? We're 40 now. It was like, he set up the contract, like statute one, two, and three.
So on the completion of statute number 2, we were supposed to give them $20,000.
Right. Well, first of all, statute 2 is gonna be completed, I think, by the end of the week. I have pictures of him slathering on the concrete right now. And he also is desperate for a little cash. I would recommend the following. I'd like to get him paid 10,000 this week against the 20 that we owe him, right? The other 10 will come as soon as we have a finished picture of this statute, which might be the end of the week. But then I think we should revise this instead of paying 30 for the next one. And if we do this as a favor to him because he's very, very, let's say, needy of a payment right now, I think we should pay 20 for the third one and reserve 10 for the installation, because what I'm feeling is he'll probably be through with these within the month. The installation comes, we don't know when, because of the permit we have to get. First of all, we have to get the permit. Then we have to do the site preparation. And we can't ask him to do anything until the site preparation is done. We don't know when it is, so I would say that if we make a deal now and say, we'll give you a little what you need now, but we're reserving 10,000 at the end, at least we have something that remains to be paid when these are actually installed, whenever that is. You know, I hope this doesn't turn out to be another fishing pier. But as you remember, we were held up by Fish and Game there for what, a year and a half, whatever it was.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna run into that type of problem here.
But that would be my recommendation, and what I'd like to do for him, because he's been very diligent. And so far, even with his injuries, for a while he couldn't even pick up cement or stuff that he needed to do these things of a pretty substantial size. So that's my recommendation.
Well, I will say, since I've recused myself, that this is going to require, yourself and Supervisor Barrett to agree. Because there's no necessity to conduct this business as it's an amendment to an existing contract. Ron, am I correct about that interpretation of the necessity to do business principle?
When you are attempting to revise an existing contract, that stands on a little different footing than if obviously you're making a new contract. So in this particular case, I mean, in theory, the contract is the contract, and that the vendor can say, oh, no, this was the deal. I was supposed to get, 40, 20, and 30, or whatever the numbers worked out to be. And you're changing it on me. Well, okay, that may well be, and he may be able to bring a claim, I suppose, later if he thinks that's improper. But if there is a concern that the presupposed condition of any contract is not going to be followed here, then in fact, I believe you can make that change. Would a judge agree with me? Who knows what a judge would do, but make the change. And if a claim is brought, we'll deal with it.
Hold on. I'm not really addressing the merits because I've recused myself. What I'm saying is, if there's a deadlock between the two remaining supervisors who can vote on it, I'm saying that I'm not going to be forced to make a decision because there is no necessity to amend the contract. That's what I'm trying to ascertain.
Yeah,
Ron.
well, and perhaps I misunderstood the focus of your question, but certainly under the Public Ethics Act, if there are two supervisors that disagree with how to proceed, the one supervisor who has a conflict can vote if he or she wants to. If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine, and then the matter just stays unchanged.
Okay, I just wanted that context for the other two.
My recommendation is that we either we ask the sculptor to amend the current contract, or we just make a new contract. And I think if we can get away with an amendment, I think he'd agree with it, which is saying, as a favor because of your needs right now, we'll give you an additional payment against the total, but what we want is, we want to revise it so when you finish the third work, we reserve 10,000 until we can ask you to install it. Does that sound reasonable? It's like a quid pro quo. We'll give you this, you give us that.
Why are we even paying that much up front?
That's what it costs, Pam.
You really think to take care of people. You gave an extra $10,000 for the house at Marshall's Falls. Now you're taking care of this guy.
So.
What about the
Wait,
residents
excuse
of
me,
our
what are you saying?
township?
We shouldn't have hired the sculptor with the LSA funds for
I don't
$90,000?
think it's $90,000.
It doesn't cost us anything.
Yes, it costs somebody.
Well,
Hey, it's gonna be great for a political flyer. Put that junk up with $90,000 on it, mail it to everybody with your two pictures.
with what? What are you talking
You
about?
can't, Robert, you can't be spending money like this.
We're not spending the township's money, don't you understand? This is a grant. It's given to us.
Complete waste.
Well, go talk to DCED, he handles the grants for LSA for Monroe County, and you can tell them what you think about it, okay? Because they're the people that give the grants, and they're the people that have the authority, the absolute and only authority to give LSA grants. That's it. Because we're a fourth-class county. Monroe County has nothing to do with it. We have nothing to do. We apply like everyone else, and they decide what they want to do. So this is not money that comes out of the taxpayers. This is money that comes out of the slot machines, if you want to know where
It comes out of the taxpayers one way or another.
What, wait, excuse me,
It's not
it comes out,
called for.
it comes out of the taxpayers because it's 10% of the slot machine revenue? How do you figure that's coming out of the taxpayers? I'd like to know.
In the slot machines.
Are we running a casino here? Is that what you think?
Stop giving our money away, Robert.
It's not our money.
What, you gave away 10,000 at Marshall Falls because you felt sorry for him. Now you feel sorry for this guy.
You know,
Can I, hello, it's Brian.
I'm gonna.
Listen.
I'm
I'm going to vote right now tonight. If we take a vote, I'm going to vote against it. All right? And Jacob, I don't want to put you in a place where you have to vote, but I think you said that you won't. And I think then, Robert, you go back to this guy and we amend whatever the hell we have and make it so that it doesn't look like we're spending $90,000 in a year where we already raised taxes and we've got a lot more stuff coming at us.
Have to do with raising taxes when it's an LSA grant.
It's still
This is
money.
I understand, but the perception right now it's not the best.
You may not be
I'm going to vote against it. Is it?
I'm
Do you want
voting for it.
to? You vote for it.
I wish the chairman would make a decision on this because this is a big issue.
So
To
take away the
interrupt.
money.
Hold on.
First, there needs to be a motion
Yes,
before any
you
votes are cast.
Any,
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the payment of $10,000 now and to amend the contract so that the final payment of $10,000 on the $90,000 that we've already approved 2 years ago will be paid on installation of this art exhibit.
there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Levenheim. Do I hear a second? Motion dies for a lack of a second.
May I say one other thing when I was working this week, and you know the Frisbee golf.
For what?
Frisbee golf at Minnesota Hills that has been in disrepair for a long time.
Frisbee golf?
Yeah, you never heard of it?
Yeah, it's not on the agenda. What are you talking about?
Well, why have we ignored it, not taken care of it?
Hold on, let me speak to this. We haven't ignored it. We applied for a master site planning grant for River's Edge so we can fix it. And ascertain what to do with that other back portion of that park that hasn't been
Yeah, but
touched.
the Frisbee golf was there and people used it, and some of the residents down there are trying to clear the path.
Sure. No, we've actually, I've walked it with Keith Dondi and some others. To discuss that exact thing, but that's gonna be part of that grant, so. I expect some public input on that in the next couple of months.
I mean, you're not even talking a lot of money, just getting it cleaned up. I think there's one basket missing.
But we did speak with Ed with regard to what our crew can do, and there's actually a fair amount that won't cost us anything beyond our normal operating expenses for the path clearing. So that's gonna be something that comes up in the spring.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on, we have a discussion on the attestation of payment liens. Robert, this is something you wanted to bring up?
Yes, I do. And Ron, have you looked at this at all that I sent to you?
I believe I had sent to you back a copy of the,
Yeah.
I'll call it the blight ordinance that had been adopted before, and I had asked whether or not you thought that carried the day or not. It seems to carry at least some of the water that you want carried, but that's your call to make as to when I say your supervisor's call.
It only carries it for the reason of blight. And what I'm talking about is something else, which is similar and it's objective, but for a different reason. And the reason is.
Go ahead.
The reason that when somebody, especially when somebody buys something at an upset sale, a developer, this goes on, it's gone on in Lake Valhalla, it's gone on in Shawnee Valley, it's gone on in other places that I've heard complaints of. Suddenly, the liens that are due on it, because on an upset sale, the buyer is responsible for all liens, remain unpaid by a developer. They just either ignore it or they kick it down the road and think they'll worry about it a few years hence when they may build and sell the property. And the HOAs have very little power to collect this. They have to go to court, which costs them a lot of money, and the developers have the upper hand in most of this. What I'm suggesting is that before we issue building permits for either new construction or for major remodels where we're tearing down exterior walls, that the developer applying for a building permit would have to give us proof that there are no liens outstanding, no taxes outstanding, no dues outstanding. I think what we could do is just require, let's say, a notarized letter to this effect. And then if this letter is given to us under circumstances where there are liens or taxes or dues due, we can rescind the building permit and deny it, and say that you cannot even apply for one for another year. So I think that would give this some teeth and give the people that are being penalized here because they're not getting the money they deserve, some leg up to get it. And another part of this, and by the way, both of these come out of a discussion between me and Ken Wolf because he's experienced this many times. The other thing is developers who will build a house, and if it's a spec house, they'll wait till they sell it to get a certificate of occupancy. And sometimes it can take years. So in the meantime, they'll get in a tenant. And if they have anybody living in the house, they should have a C of O, but they don't get it. And we've gone through things, especially with one builder here, I won't name, where Ken has called them over a period of, let's say, a year and a half. Oh, we'll get there. Oh, yeah, we just forgot about that. Oh, we're going. No, that's not the case. The case is they don't have to pay taxes on it if they don't have a C of O. It's not a habitable house. So,
And that's a game they play, a lot of them. They don't want to pay taxes, and they won't get a C of O until they got a buyer or a tenant.
and I think
So I think I understand what you're saying, Robert, and I think I agree with you.
Just give me a moment. I'm going to just pull the file. I'll be back in 30 seconds.
I'm just proposing this. I think it's something we should draft, and I'm not the drafter here, but it's pretty simple, and it's really saying you've got to abide by the rules, or you won't get a building permit, or if you violate the C of O rules, you won't get a C of O. We'll postpone that for a year or two. So anyway.
But they can't transfer the property if they go to sell it because it would come up when they go back and look at it. They'd have to, things would have to.
They'll transfer it when they sell it, but what they'll do is they'll keep it, let's say, occupied with a tenant. And they won't let us, they won't tell us that it's occupied, and they won't go for a C of O until they actually have a sale. That could be years.
Well, Robert, we've run into this before, as you said, with Ken, and maybe we have to institute some follow-up where someone, probably Ken, has to follow up. Hey, a new building, it's up, and check it out and see if anybody's in it. If he knows he hasn't issued a COV.
Well,
So every 6 months, he can look at his files, pull the COVs that haven't been picked up, and make sure they're vacant.
certainly he should do that, and with liens, I mean, with C of Os, at least you can see if anyone's living there, or if the car's in the driveway, or whatever you want to look at and say, maybe he's not following the rules here. With the liens and so forth, nobody knows. The only people that know are really the people that are, let's say, an HOA who has a lien on a house. We don't know that, and it's not our job to really look it up. But if we are requiring the builder to give us a notarized statement that there are no liens, or all liens and dues and taxes have been paid, at least if we then find out, or if the HOA finds out about it, they have some way of forcing the issue, because otherwise we'll pull the building permit and we'll say that as a result of lying on this statement, we're pulling your building permit. You will not be able to apply for another one for a year.
But Ken could go to the courthouse and look all this up.
What are you saying, Pam?
Ken could go to the courthouse and do his research and look up to see what's going
Look,
on.
we don't have the time or the inclination to do the research. It's not our job. But our job is to say, you've at least got to tell us honestly that there are no liens here. If you've lied on this, okay, then we have a recourse to pull your permit. But we're not in the business of going to courthouses to check all these things.
So Robert, is this in essence an extension of the permit denial ordinance we enacted in 2021?
Of course, I can't find the file now that I need to see the file, but I thought that permit denial ordinance, when I say blight, it doesn't necessarily deal only with blight, but it does say that before there's new construction or other work, that the certifications as to taxes, et cetera, need to be verified. Now, I will pull that again and look at it because I certainly don't think it talks about HOA dues.
Take a look, Ron, because I looked at 229 that you sent me, and my impression is it is specifically about blight. It has some of the same requirements, but it's about blight, whereas this is not about blight. This is something much more general.
It was the blight legislation that addressed the ability to enforce the permit denial. So that's
Yeah.
where the authority comes from, but it isn't necessarily just blight, but it would be great. You know, I mean, this idea sounds like one we're following. So Ron, if you have more time.
I will.
to-
I can double check that, and certainly it's an easy fix by saying that I'm not sure where the certificate of occupancies come out of. I think they come out of the zoning ordinance, to simply amend the ordinance to say that before there is a certificate of occupancy for either new construction or major remodeling, and we may need to put some meat on that bone by saying more than 10,000 or less than 20,000 or whatever, we can make that change. So I'll check it, and we can then proceed from there.
Okay, that's it. I'm just bringing up these issues to talk about them, because obviously an amendment has to be somehow drafted to specific to this, but you know, it's an issue, that's all.
I agree.
Well, sounds like a good action then. Our next item is a discussion about parking requirements and ordinances. This is something Robert had brought up, but it's something that I think a lot of us have talked about, especially with the planning commission, particularly as we're seeing more proposed development in certain areas. We're seeing, you know, potentially excessive parking, where that's, you know, taking up green space and potentially harming, you know, the environment. So I think that, you know, the most prudent move that we should consider is having the planning commission look into the parking requirements, because they're essentially permissive. It is harder to have less, it's harder to ask for relief on parking requirements than it is to simply propose something that's more ecological, right? I mean, we'd have to have, you know, variances to the zoning hearing board, you know, fees in lieu of open space, which are great. We appreciate those. But I think we're quickly seeing, you know, everything is going to be, you know, paved up. And,
Well,
you know, we don't want to see that happen, particularly like with Gateway, for example, or other, you know, developments, even, you know, smaller scale.
Well, the trend, which I've been doing some reading on, and actually Michael Elbert keyed me into, because he had read about it, is that bigger municipalities are now getting rid of off-street parking or ordinances and so forth, for this very reason, that everything's turning into a parking lot. And we don't need the space. And just around here, if you look at the parking ordinances, I always look at Price Chopper when I go by there. I've never seen that lot more than about half full,
Right.
ever. And what it does when you have that much parking is it puts all the retail that much farther away from where people can see it on the street. It's both for a reason of open space having less, and also I think just for commerce, that when you're building giant parking lots in front of everything that could be a trade store, you can't even see it. And then in that parking lot, for instance, it's an L-shaped buildings. Well, if you look at some of the buildings in the middle of the L, they don't rent. No
Right.
one knows they're there.
True. I have no specific recommended course, except just that we, put this on the docket for the planning commission. I know they expressed interest. I just wanted to see if that's consensus.
I think it's a good idea.
Well, we've been through this before and not too long ago, so hopefully the PC will accept it. I'd like to hear what they have to say again. Do you remember when we went through the misery of the gas shortage and everybody's driving little cars, even Robert? And so we decided, well, geez, why do we have these big sides parking? And we decreased ours then, and that was maybe about 8 years ago, 7 years ago. So maybe it's good to look at it, see.
Definitely, because I think it also relates to commerce, like with the common entrances, so there's not a million, points of access to like even a state highway or local roadway. They have, an enormous problems with that. And I think a good example of where there's less issues with that is like East Stroudsburg at Giant, where the state liquor store and the home goods are. You have only a couple, common entrances, and there's actually not excessive parking over there for the most part.
And it's pretty much, it's full a lot of the time.
Right.
Well,
And the idea of a small car, people are driving bigger cars now, SUVs and pickup trucks.
Sure.
I still drive
True.
a small.
Let's say we give it to the PC.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. All right.
Robert?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, great. Next is the discussion of the Delaware Water Gap Volunteer Fire Company request. At our previous meeting last month, they discussed their issues obtaining funding for the SCBA's, which, essentially the air pack apparatus. Lucas took a look and wrote an extensive recommendation for us to provide to them in lieu of an actual financial contribution, which we would be strapped to give at this point. He's recommended a couple of financial or fiscal options for fire company that are going to allow them to finance the equipment at a much lower rate. Their proposed rate that they had shown us was 5.984%, whereas Lucas found them a rate of 4.85%. And he found the major seller with about a $14,000 decrease. So between the interest savings and the actual equipment quoted price difference, Lucas figures this option would allow them to save $18,274.63. And then there's also a state fire and EMS grant and loan program that will allow them to finance a portion of their project at $27,000 of it at a 2% interest rate. So he's done all that legwork for them. He just asked that we provide it to them if there's no issue. I think, the lack of a contribution on our end is regrettable, but it's the most prudent move. And I think this more than makes up for what we would be able to consider anyway.
I agree with that.
Robert?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so we'll get that to Howard then.
All right.
Seems simple, and I'm sure it'll work out. I mean, they do have some time, and they did express that when we talked to them last, and they were holding out for some other funding, I think, from their council. So hopefully between those two mechanisms, they'll be in good shape. Next.
Okay.
I would like to consider item 3 from our consent agenda, as I mentioned earlier, which is resolution number 524 in relation to the multimodal fund grant. Julia, do you want to clarify why the slight change for everyone?
Sure. I heard back from Christy Berry, who is our representative for that grant. When you originally signed the grant application, we included the full grant number, meaning the grant funds we were getting from PennDOT as well as the township's match. Turns out they only want the grant number that they were getting. or that we are getting, which is the 351,000. And they also had a question, I guess they're not familiar with local government, but Robert's title in the actual resolution, the township supervisor. But just like we do with all of our resolutions, he signs as vice chair.
Sure.
So they asked that those two titles be the same as well.
Ah, so they weren't familiar. Okay.
Exactly. So those are the two minor changes to this grant. This is basically a de minimis change,
Yeah.
but we do need to you guys need to repass the grant as 524.
As expressed at our previous consideration of the same, I will recuse myself. Do I hear a motion on the matter?
I'll make a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Barrett, second by Mr. Levenheim. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect that I recuse myself. And it's adopted 2-0. Next is the Board of Supervisors report. Either my colleagues like to note anything?
Before we move on to that, I would like just to return to G for a minute. Brian, you voted against it. Do you realize though that we're under the existing contract? That means when these 3 sculptures are finished, he's paid. And what we could amend it towards, if you do what I'm suggesting, is reserve something so that when we get to the point where we are ready to install, he has the incentive to install because he hasn't been paid. Under the existing contract, I don't think that's true. Because I think it's 30, 30, and 30, depending on when he turns in each of these sculptures.
He shouldn't be paid till he's finished. It's approved.
This is the contract, Pam.
Supervisor Lovenheim, this is Ron speaking.
Yes.
Certainly, if the motion didn't pass, there's nothing that prevents you from going back to him and seeing
Right.
if he's willing to renegotiate the contract. If he says, you know what, I think I can agree to that, you can hold the 10,000, et cetera. Well, then you can come back to the board and say, all right, we have an agreement for this change. It's not being forced down the throat of the vendor, nor is the vendor trying to pull a fast one on the township. And then you can see if the amended agreement would pass muster. Right now, you don't have an amended agreement. You have a motion that the amendment of the agreement would not pass because the motion did fail.
But the motion failed, so we're stuck with the contract we have at the moment.
Yeah, but there's nothing that prevents you from going back to him and asking him to change it voluntarily. If he changes it voluntarily, that's perfectly fine. And you can come back to the board and say you have a voluntary change of the contract and then see if that passes. So there's nothing wrong with you doing that unless the other members of the board believe that you would be browbeating this fellow, if you will, which I doubt would occur. So if you want to see if he'll agree to it, I think you can do that.
All right, thanks for that advice.
I think procedurally
It's worthwhile.
yeah, procedurally that will make this easier.
Why not just, he's got done and ended?
There's no
Okay.
reasons. All right. Board of Supervisors report. Brian, Robert, do either of you want to note anything?
No,
I'm just, we have a big hearing coming up, a zoning hearing. And I guess it's on the 7th of March. And I was wondering if you guys would consider having Ron attend that meeting on our behalf.
Which is that the variance that we?
Yes,
received?
yeah, there's a lot to it. He's asking for a lot. And I just think that it would be good to have somebody there
I
like
plan-
Ron
Yeah,
on our behalf.
I plan to
Yeah,
attend.
I have no problem with Ron attending. I mean, certainly it's good for information. So Ron, if you're available for that zoning hearing board meeting.
It's on the
It's-
7th, I believe.
It's the first Tuesday, so I think I'm okay, but I know March has turned out to be a very busy month for me. Now, I'm assuming I'm just going for informational purposes. I'm not going there as an attorney who is representing the township in the actual hearing.
No, and I'm going for informational purposes too.
Okay, so as long as I know that, because if I'm
I'm
going
not-
for the township in the hearing, I have to
No.
know what position the township wants me to take. So, okay, that's fine.
I'm not representing the supervisors, I'm going for information.
Jacob, I reviewed all those plans and I don't see how you're gonna have three people walking here that have never gone over it and said, and read everything in his new economic development area. I don't see how they can make.
It's gonna have to be up to the zoning hearing board. You're free to, make public comment testimony at that hearing.
But they're not gonna know anything. I mean, they're just coming in here.
We're gonna rely upon their judgment, and then if we have an issue with their judgment, then we can decide what to do with our
Maybe you should have a
solicitor.
workshop or something with them.
It wouldn't be appropriate with the separation of powers. They have to be independent of us. They're just appointed by us. So
Because this thing is really a mess. I've gone through it all and I don't see how they're gonna be able to sit and,
well, you're free to make that comment to them.
Well, and not only that, husband and wife, this is terrible. I think that if Ron were there and we did have an inclination, if you will, to appeal their decision, he wouldn't have to go through the whole thing again. He'd be there, he'd know what we did, what we want.
I think that's true.
So,
Well, yeah, it'd be great for him to attend, certainly.
it's very complicated, as you know, Jacob, but I don't know how many. They're asking for a variance, but then they're asking for 3, 4, 5 different variances within one motion. I think it's crazy to begin with. You want one motion, say you want to talk about parking, you want a variance on this, fine. You want about building height, that's one. They're apples and pears, but he's got them all jingled together. It looks like he's going to rewrite the whole damn, I don't know. Anyway, it'll be interesting.
Going to have that discretion to grant variances in part or not at all, or completely. That's going to be their discretion. So if Ron,
Right.
Attend on our behalf, then we can certainly take it from there. But Martha, I see your hand is up on Zoom.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just because there's a little bit of shorthand, you guys know what you're talking about. So I'm curious about this zoning hearing board meeting on the 7th and the variance that's being requested. I don't know in regards to what project or who's asking for what. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Ron, do you mind, since you forwarded us that application, do you mind giving a quick explainer?
This is on the Westfield situation, correct?
The only one I'm
Westfield.
aware of, yes.
Westfield
Yeah.
Or is it Howell? It's not Howell, right? That's a conditional use. This is
I just
Westfield.
came in.
Yeah, all right. So that's a conditional use anyway. Westfield Hospital Westfield Project has filed an application requesting variances for the project that they are proposing. And I believe it's a mixed use, but I'd have to check again, Martha. I don't remember exactly, but they're coming in to request that project for Dr. Khan. And
Right.
as I always tell everyone in zoning matters, because I am a zoning hearing board solicitor in 2 different municipalities, there's 5 different elements that have to be met. And the most important is that there is something peculiar about the property, some geographic issue or some topographic issue that causes the property not to be able to be used as zoned. So if in fact the property can be used as presently zoned, the granting of a variance is, in my opinion, sometimes not proper, because you have to show that there's something special about the property that you can't, build a house on it like you would be able to, or you can't put a grocery store on it like you would be able to. And that's how it's zoned. So,
Okay.
we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just didn't know what project it was in regards to. On a similar note, while I've got the mic, if I could back up to the March 27th meeting again, it wasn't said what that was for, but I believe that's for the 2 ordinances that are being adopted.
Yeah, sorry, you might have just missed that. So it directly correlates to the item we considered right
Okay.
before, which was the curative amendment to prevent, to define solar and warehouse uses.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for those clarifications.
Not a problem.
Who is on our zoning hearing board now?
Marianne Cannell and Lucas Fuller. We need at this point to, I think there's
One other,
another vacancy.
I
Well,
mean, I know
if you-
Lucas, but what kind of background do they have that they can deal in with this?
it's the way that the code is set up. I mean, we all know that, you know, people share different feelings about the qualifications of elected officials, so it's this much the same with these, but we feel that we've vetted them and we're confident in their ability. So, you know, we're all gonna be watching that hearing closely.
It's Robert's baby.
Next is the consideration for the payment of the bills. The bills total $62,175.41, and they are all regular invoices dealing with engineering and legal bills and utilities, and a couple of vehicle repairs for public works and some sign striping stuff.
I'll make a motion, Vince.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim.
I'll
Sorry.
second it, Jacob.
Motion by Mr. Levenheim, second by Mr. Barrett. Any questions? Favor?
Aye.
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 And finally, before we consider adjournment, are there any public comments?
Can I make one?
Sure.
I was over at Lake Valhalla over the weekend and I noticed.
Further explain
If
to
you're gonna-
Martha, because I pulled the file. And this is a project that's low mid-rise apartments, and our variance requests are for the off-street parking, whether it's not supposed to be permitted in the front yard setback, building height, they're asking for a variance on that. The size of the parking spaces, they're asking for a variance on that. And the number of off-street parking spaces. So those are the variances that are being requested for that project.
And Ron,
Yes.
can you do that under one request?
Well, yeah, you can. I mean, you know,
What
but
the
there
hell,
has to
stop,
be.
why stop there?
Well,
Just say to me that if I wanted to request a variance on everything in the whole chapter 22, I could do it?
I believe you could, but there has to be separate motions on these variances. They can't
Oh,
come
I
in and
understand.
say, you know, give me a variance on these four things under one motion. I don't think that would fly. I think you'd have to do a motion under each variance because you could put conditions. Now, you could say, okay,
Right.
We'll let you put parking in the front yard setback, but then we want a screen, you know, landscaping screen or a tree screen or something. So I think they have to do it separately by motions. They can come in and ask for four variances. That's not a problem, but it has to all be by separate motion. And again, the guiding light is, could they do this project without the variances, or could they use the project? Could they build in this zone without a variance? If they can build in this zone without a variance, then they're just asking for help, if you will, that's not enough. But I know some
Amen.
zoning boards give out variances like, you know, people give out chiclets, you know?
Got it.
You can
Okay.
proceed.
I was over Lake Valhalla and I looked at the water that you went up by the swamps. Did you have them appraised yet?
Well, I'm sorry, what was
At
that?
Lake Valhalla, the wetlands, have you had them appraised yet?
No,
I don't know why you're doing it. Why?
because two reasons. First of all, I think if we can protect that land, it protects the water and the lake of Lake Valhalla.
How
Right
many-
now, people have trespassed on there for various reasons, as Brian and I discussed. Killing the swans was one.
That happens. to
Killing
places
the beavers and opening up the beaver dams on private property was another.
Do you think they might have opened that beaver dam because the water was backing up?
They may have opened up because of various reasons, but They were trespassing on private property to do it without permission.
And how are you gonna keep that from happening? You gonna move down there?
I think that if we do a survey of this and get an assessor's report on what this is worth, perhaps we can find a grant to protect these lands.
Well, why take it off the tax roll? I mean, nobody can do on it to do anything. You're always gonna have, I live where there's hunters all the time.
It's not
I
a
mean,
question of
you deal with
anybody
it.
building on it, it's what people are doing to it and what it's doing to the quality of Lake Valhalla.
Although I will say there are people that, have wanted to build on. I mean, we saw with Black Buffalo, we denied that land
Yeah.
development plan
But this
because
is,
their engineer never got to it.
this is really wet, and I wondered that, they didn't, but we had beavers down here, at Price's Landing. You didn't go kill those. They killed a swan at Price's Landing. You wanna buy all that?
I don't believe in killing beavers, man.
I don't
Or
believe
any
in
other
killing
animal,
anything,
okay?
but I don't think the township's job to go around and buy every little piece of property.
Well, I disagree with you. I think it's the township's job to try to protect people's quality of life. And
Well-
quality of life and open space
Where you
are
gonna,
things that are very valuable.
where you gonna stop? How can you say that after what you've done with Dr. Khan? I have 100.
What I've done with Dr. Khan?
You
Are you talking about what I've done with Dr. Khan?
enabled
We.
this.
Who are you talking about?
You enabled it. You told him you were changing the law so he could build.
I changed the laws? I don't change laws.
That's
Sometimes I draft suggestions like I did tonight. But I don't make laws.
Residential units on 11 acres, 21 motel units, 9,400 square feet of retail, 2,800 in doctor's office, all on 11 acres.
You're gonna have to rely upon the judgment of the zoning hearing board before that plan would ever get to us.
I mean, what a mess.
Well, that's your opinion. We have a zone called the ED zone. Enterprise zone.
Unfortunately, we know
Within
what we
that, you
did.
can build mixed use, okay? This is a mixed use building,
Robert,
buildings.
I know what you're thinking of mixed use, but this is not. I told you, want to see mixed.
What do
use?
you think mixed use is?
Go see some developments that are mixed use.
Which
This
are?
is- This is just gonna be a slum.
Well, that's your opinion.
You're not gonna.
You know, you seem to have a lot of opinion, but no facts.
Oh, that's not true, Robert.
Hold on.
At
Okay,
least I don't go around giving township money away.
all right. Are there any other public comments? Mr. Bagley?
Briefly, appreciate the work you do. Does anyone know whose birthday it is today?
Who's what?
Whose birthday? It
It
is?
wouldn't happen to be
Right.
the forefather. I like that shirt.
Birthday, First in war, first in peace, first in the heart of his countrymen, the indispensable man. Used to be a federal holiday, till Bill Clinton changed it. Just wanted to call attention to George Washington, the greatest American in history.
I wish everyone on the Zoom could see Pete's shirt because it's pretty cool.
Well, I'm Italian, swears.
Can I interrupt?
Come on.
Who's speaking?
I'm Pete Begley. How are you, Mr.
You
Barrett?
gotta come around this
Oh,
side.
no,
Oh,
no.
You can see him, Robert.
Oh,
Ow,
Pete.
yeah. You're
Yes.
good, man, Pete.
Oh.
Correct, there it is.
The George Washington t-shirt. For
Yeah.
president.
All right.
The
I can
forefather.
see it.
They'll make you an offer you can't refuse. Thank you again.
Thank you very much for coming, Pete. Any other public comments before we entertain them?
Thanks,
I-
Pete.
Yes, sir.
Woo.
Any other public comments before I entertain a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Second,
Motion by Mr. Barrett, second by Mr. Levenheim, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All right.
Adjourned at 7 PM. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
And good night.
Safe home, everyone.
You too, be safe, it's a little bit icy.